listening to the Hidden Killers podcast with Tony Brueski,
featuring former federal prosecutor and president of West Coast Trial Lawyers, Neama Rahmani.
Ruby's husband, Kevin Franke, has made a statement through his attorney that he's focused on doing what's best for the kids at this point, that they've been separated for 13 months now, and he wants to work through concerns as a family. He wants to get in there and, quote, rebuild and bridge relationships rather than sling mud and point fingers. He also wants to help his children, family, and friends heal the past trauma and events. Is this someone who's trying to get in front of this and not be charged as well? Or is this someone who was also a victim of abuse from Ruby and is now kind of seeing the light of day and the errors in his ways as a parent of not stepping up while this was going on in his own home?
You know, Tony, we've talked about this, you know, when you have what we call the non-offending parent, right? What was dad doing? You know, why wasn't he protecting the kids? So, you know, we know that, you know, he's apparently lawyered up and probably saying and doing the right things, because the last thing you want to do in a situation like this, the evidence seems pretty strong. You got the kids talking about, you know, their wounds being dressed in cayenne pepper and all sorts of horrible stuff. And really, why hasn't he been charged? Will he be charged? And he better get as far away from his wife as he possibly can.
I mean, it really takes a special kind of evil when you're dressing wounds with cayenne pepper and honey. I mean, just some of these accusations on their own are just horrific, and I can only imagine how they're going to end up playing in front of a jury. But what about the points that several of the neighbors have made, where they had been saying for quite some time, things aren't right over here? They'd been calling police. They've been letting people know. They'd even been dropping food off at the door because they thought, well, these kids, if they're not going to get it there, maybe we can sneak it to them in some way, shape, or form. The Utah Division of Child and Family Services, you know, saying that there's not a whole lot they could do to one of the neighbors while they complained about this actually going on because of Utah's free-range parenting law. Is that really accurate? Is that really true? Was there nothing that could have been done to step in, or is it, you know, just another agency that doesn't have the resources that they need to do a job properly in any way, shape, or form?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of excuses and lack of resources and just frankly dropping the ball. You know, I've worked on both sides as a prosecutor, and there's some great folks that work for the government, and there's some people that are lazy and are just clocking in and out and not working as hard as they should be. You would hope that people who go into social work and are there to help kids would do their job, but you know, kids being not fed and tied up in rope, and you can't tell me that, you know, law enforcement social workers can't come in. I mean, it's pretty easy to get a search warrant. You go and convince the judge that there's probable cause a crime has been committed. And that sounds like a crime's been committed. You got witnesses and evidence and so forth. So, and that's even on the criminal side. You know, administratively, you can just show up, you can start asking questions. So I don't buy the argument that there's nothing that social workers could have done. You know, if it weren't for this kid who escaped, I mean, who knows how long this would have lasted. So, you know, that's a disappointing response.
It's a story that we hear all too often when it comes to child protective services and being underfunded and understaffed. And it's over and over. It's been going on forever. What needs to be done to have some sort of structural change in these agencies across the country, so this isn't the overwhelming theme half the time when we find an abused or malnourished or child that's been sitting in a horrible condition when red flags have been going off forever?
Yeah, I don't know what the answer is, but like you said, Tony, I mean, it's just a tale as old as time, at least recently. It's one documentary after another. I was actually doing a podcast yesterday, and I happened to have a teacher on, and she was just saying, you know, I've reported abuse. I'm a mandatory reporter multiple times involving the same kid, and nothing's been done. Obviously, look, I don't know the details of the case. These juvenile cases, they're all sealed. There's no real public information available. But just kind of reading the tea leaves, you have these kids who can't protect themselves, right? Oftentimes they deny the abuse. They're scared of their parents. It's the psychology of a victim. I mean, there's adults that deny sexual assault and domestic violence, much less these young kids. So whenever you see something like this and it's a report and social workers don't act, it's very disheartening because your only job is to protect these kids and you haven't done it.
Is that part of the problem of how, and rightfully so, it's involving kids, so there is more secrecy, names aren't put out there, things are sealed more than if it would have been a case that just involves solely adults, but at the same point, does that hurt these investigations, or accountability, I think is more the word I'm looking for these agencies, because there's not the information out there, there's nobody that can hold their feet to the fire, or not as easily hold their feet to the fire until something goes horribly wrong.
No, I agree. I mean, there's less public and media pressure because, look, let's be honest. I don't care if I don't want to get political, but you can be Hunter Biden or Donald Trump. If you're an adult and, there's pressure on folks to bring investigations and to do their jobs, and Congress is involved, American people, guess what? Those investigations move forward. Now you have these types of cases, the crimes are, committed in the dark. You have folks who are investigating them that they're not elected or they're not accountable like a district attorney would be for some reason. Look, that's when people get voted out of office.
Yeah.
You don't do your job. You don't prosecute crimes. There's going to be someone else that comes in that does. And, unfortunately, when it comes to DCFS and some of these organizations, they're just not accountable in the same way other types of prosecutors are in this country. Because like I always said, every prosecutor in this country is either elected or appointed by someone who is. So there is that pressure on them to do their jobs. And, DCFS obviously operates a little bit differently, or Child Protective Services.
You're consuming the Hidden Killers podcast.
Want more? Start binging on all of our true crime podcasts right now through Apple Podcasts and get an ad-free experience when you sign up to be a True Crime Today Premium Plus member exclusively on Apple Podcasts.
More of the Hidden Killers podcast dropping soon.
Press subscribe now.